What's up, y'all? Arrowhead just dropped a bombshell on us this update. We just got a total of 41 changes that directly affect our day-to-day gameplay. Let's get right into it. Starting with armor changes, armors with armor rating above 100 will now also reduce damage on headshots. This is huge. This now gives even more incentive to start running heavy and medium armor if it has the extra padding modifier, especially against bugs. I don't know about heavy, but medium 100%. Because with bugs, if you ran medium, you would just get run down and end up getting headshot by a flying hunter. So your best bet was just run light armor and still have that happen to you. Now, you'll take less damage from the headshot, meaning you could take more subsequent hits, which means you live longer, which means you get to murder the bastard that tried to take you off the map. To be honest, I don't really think this makes much of a difference against bots, because usually you either have the shield generator or the riot shield if you're smart. Both of these protected you from being headshot flawlessly most of the time. I say most because the shield generator gets destroyed, whereas with the riot shield, you have it for the whole game basically. Moving on from armor, we got weapons. And oh boy, do we have a lot of weapons. Starting us off is the crossbow. The crossbow now has a slightly smaller explosion, increased stagger, a decreased number of maximum mags, slight reduction in ergonomics, and an increase in muzzle velocity. You now also receive 8 mags from resupply, up from 6, with your maximum mags being 8, down from 12. To be honest, I don't really understand some of these changes, mainly the smaller explosion radius. If we're being honest, that's what carried this weapon. So for them to go and change that doesn't really make sense. The mags, okay, I can understand that. 12 may be too many. But what made the weapon somewhat usable was that explosion radius. So to go and change that doesn't make sense. I would say this is an overall nerf. I don't see any of this being a buff at all, to be honest. Moving on, we got the Quasar Cannon. Increased recharge time from 10 seconds to 15 seconds. This makes sense. This was easily the best support weapon in the game for a good minute now, so recharge time nerf makes sense. Though I don't think it really does much, an extra 5 seconds doesn't really change anything. Whatever you're shooting at is most likely already dead, unless it's a Bio Titan. And if that's the case, then you'll probably feel this 5-second hit. Other than that, you won't ever notice it. So, a slight nerf. Time for the second worst weapon in the game, the Adjudicator. Full auto is now the default firing mode. Its recoil has been reduced. Its max mags have now gone up from 6 to 8. And whenever you resupply, you'll gain full mags. And it's also now classified as an assault rifle. This isn't too bad now. As you can see, this is the recoil before the buff and after the buff. It's basically a laser beam now. I'm willing to even go as far to say that this is a good weapon for bots now. For bugs, it's still not worth picking up, especially with one of the buffs that happened just a little bit later on. But for bots, this is massive. Next is the laser cannon. We had a slight increase to damage, but a slight reduction in damage versus large volume bodies. If I'm gonna be completely honest, I don't know what that means. I guess that just means it did more damage than it was supposed to against bigger targets. I'm sure one of you laser cannon enthusiasts can let me know, because I have zero clue. Now here's one I'm actually excited for. The Plasma Punisher. Decreased mags from 12 to 8. Increased mags received from resupply from 6 to 8. Increased projectile speed. Decreased damage fall off. And is now categorized as an energy weapon. Once again, we see a mag nerf. But I guess I just want to cut down on the amount of power we can dish out. Okay, cool. But the main thing here is a projectile speed and a damage fall off. These two have the potential to send this weapon to the moon if it's as good as I'm hoping it to be. Because previously with the Plasma Punisher, you would basically just use this thing as a mortar that shot nerf shells. It wasn't that good, especially if you weren't hitting them directly with the ball. If you didn't hit them directly with the ball, there was no chance of killing them basically. Sad thing is though, it's going to keep the same range, just get there quicker. I would have loved for it to have more projectile speed and have just a little bit more range, because the arc is a hard thing to get used to. You got to really practice with this weapon and know where it's going to hit if you're shooting at something past 5 meters. This is a pretty good buff though. Now on to one of my favorite weapons and one that I stood by since the beginning, the Blitzer. Increased shots per minute from 30 to 45 and now placed in an energy weapon category. That doesn't matter. The increased fire rate here goes such a long way. One of the main things people complain about with this weapon is how slow it shoots. Which for me, I didn't mind because I shoot and run. It never really affected me. But now, you could do a lot more shooting and a lot less running. Some people are still going to say this is a bad weapon. It needs damage. It needs this. That. They're so far off the deep end, there's no saving them. Use this weapon against the bugs. I promise you, your life will change. Moving on to the Eruptor, we got decreased max mags. Once again, don't want us to have too much power on the battlefield. And explosion damage drops off slightly faster. I was playing around with this a little bit, and I don't know if I just suck, but it feels bad now. You'll shoot at the foot of some of the enemies, and they just won't die. Now you have to make sure that they're like really close to the initial explosion. Otherwise, they're just going to get hit and keep moving. Then again, this could just all be skill issue, but it's already a slow weapon. And then now it's not killing where it used to kill. I just don't see a reason to keep using this weapon anymore, to be honest. I do want to note that this was against the bots. That's where I think that's the only reason you should use this weapon is in the bots. For bugs, it might still be okay. I don't know. I never really liked it in bugs, so I just kind of refuse to use it. Next up is a sickle. Increased amount of mags from 6 to 3. Same as all the other mag nerfs. Too much power in the Helldiver's hand. No chance for the opposition to play. We got to tone it back a bit. We're just too strong. I get it. And for the weapon only the rover is capable of using, its damage is going up plus 50 from 300 to 350, and its max number of mags going down to 4 from 6. This will still remain a weapon that Helldivers shouldn't use, and we let the rover take care of it, because we will never get the same efficiency out of it as that thing does. Here's one people have been wanting for a minute. Railgun buff. Increased armor penetration in both safe mode and unsafe mode, and its stagger force slightly reduced. So we got a little bit of a buff and a nerf. Increased armor pen in both safe and unsafe mode is huge. You are now able to kill Hulks in safe mode again with one tap to the eye. It's back. Moving on, the heavy machine gun now has a third-person reticle. That's it. The Diligence counter sniper got a damage increase from 128 to 140, and its ergonomics got improved, so it's not going to feel as sluggish anymore and hit harder. The regular Diligence also got buffed, with this damage going from 112 to 125. So now that will also hit a little bit harder. Then we have the Redeemer, which got a slight increase to its recoil, but I don't think anybody's going to notice this at all. It feels the exact same, so I don't even think they really did much. The Peacemaker got an increase in its damage from 60 to 75. I don't know anybody who uses this, especially since the Redeemer is still exactly how it was previously. And we have the grenade pistol and the Senator. There's just kind of no reason to use this pistol. Speaking of the Senator, it has increased damage and has a speed loader now. Its damage went from 150 to 175, and whenever you reload on an empty cylinder, you get a faster reload. And for the last of the secondary weapons, the Dagger got its damage increased from 150 to 200. This is still a meh secondary. It's kind of in the same position as a Scythe is. Next up is the Liberator, which got a 5 damage increase from 55 to 60. The Liberator Concussive also got a damage increase from 55 to 65. A well-justified buff, but I still don't think these weapons are going to be used. The Dominator got a damage decrease from 300 to 275. So it loses 25 damage. It still hits like a truck, albeit a slower moving one, but it still hits hard. The Guard Dog Rover got its damage decreased by 30%. Now this doesn't do much. In fact, some people even calling it a buff because it kills you a lot slower now while retaining its wave clear capabilities. And the regular Guard Dog, the one with the Liberator, got its damage increased slightly, yet they don't say about how much. Burning damage reduced by 15. Now they don't say what weapons or stratagems are affected by this, so I'm just going to go on a limb and assume that all of them are. So this means that Flamethrower, Napalm Strike, Breaker Incendiary, and Incendiary Nades all just got nerfed. Oh, and Thermite Grenades. Almost forgot about those. This likely also includes all other fire sources like exploding barrels and jetpacks and such. So expect to live just a little bit longer if you're end up hit by those. Machine gun sentries got their health increase to match the other sentries. Why this wasn't the same, who knows. Tesla Tower got its health increased by 33%. I don't know if this is going to do much because you don't use it on bots to begin with. And for bugs, the only reason it gets destroyed is because of a charger. So unless this stops a charger hit, then this was kind of useless. Now this was kind of funny. Airburst rocket launcher will no longer detonate when shot near stratagems and other helldivers and reduced its proximity radius. Now notice how it says will no longer detonate when shot near stratagems and other helldivers. You can blow yourself up still if you shoot this over any type of weapon or backpack. I had quite a bit of fun testing this, so here's a little compilation of everything that happened.
Helldiver lost. Sending replacement.
Marking location.
Helldiver KIA. Deploying replacement. Helldiver KIA. Deploying replacement. Reinforcement.
Finally, moving on from weapons, we got some enemy nerfs. Bow Spewer and Nursing Spewer's move speed slightly reduced. While this is a good nerf because everybody hates Bow Spewers, it isn't what made them annoying. What made them annoying was the fact that they have insane tracking. Nursing Spewers don't have this aggressive tracking that Bow Spewers do, so they were really never a problem. Plus, they're way weaker, so I don't think anybody's ever struggled with them. The force required to stagger hulks has been slightly increased. So now I'm guessing things like high charged railgun shots, rockets, Quasar hits, things like that will cause them to stagger. Of course, they can still be stunned by stun grenades. That's always an option. Flame hulks got their direct flamethrower damage reduced by 20. And this felt pretty good. I didn't get one shot anymore as soon as a flame touched me. Just know though, if you do get hit by the flame, you need to dive or you will start to burn fairly quickly. Devastator fire rate slightly increased, and this is only for the standard Devastator, not the rocket or heavy. Gunship's sideways movement slightly increased. So now they'll be a bit quicker while they're strafing and try not to get hit by our anti-air capabilities, which always fails because we're the best. And gunship spawners now have a much lower cap on how many gunships they can have active at the same time. Now this is a pretty big one. Scout Striders are now less vulnerable to explosions. Now, when I was testing this, if you shot them in the faceplate with the Eruptor, last patch it would kill, this patch it wasn't. I don't know if it's just because of the Eruptor nerf, but I do know if you shot them in the leg with the Eruptor, then the Rider would drop out and the Strider would fall over. So you just have the guy that was controlling it left. I do know if you shoot them with the autocannon, they still get blown to smithereens. Still aim for that leg, and this time both the Rider and the Strider itself will die. Spore Spewers now have higher health and higher armor, so now it's going to take a little bit more to take these out than what it used to be. Here's one that affects solo players a lot. They changed how enemy patrols work. Patrol spawning has been increased when there are fewer than 4 players. The fewer the players, the bigger the change. For 4-player missions, there's no change compared to before, and the biggest notable change will be for solo players at higher difficulties. So if you're doing solo hell dives, expect to see patrols every turn. So now we got some important, not so important things. They added a setting in the menu section to disable automatic climbing and vaulting while sprinting. This is all I've been wanting since I got the game, and it's finally here. Because this was a big issue for me, but I know for y'all it may not be, but my one wish has finally been answered. I will no longer die by climbing a random rock while getting gunned down by 50 heavy gunners. They also made some minor level generation improvements to how they distribute locations throughout the map, and it should improve variation and distance between objectives, and objectives will likely not spawn as far from each other as they used to. The Raise a Flag mission is now available on the higher difficulties and not just trivial missions. And shots that ricochet from heavy armored enemies will now hit the Helldiver that fired them, so make sure you're not shooting at something that you can't take out. And along with that, it's not mentioned on here, but stalkers are truly invisible now. I don't know if it was just the way that the light was hitting them when I played, but they just pop up now. So stalkers got a pretty good buff. Maybe it's just a mutation from the TCS failing.